All right, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Big Doug and Carmi Show, your one-stop shop for everything Commanders. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, click the notification so you never miss an episode like this one with the executive director of the Senior Bowl, Jim Nagy. Jim, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, guys. How are you?
Good. A couple times a year, we always get to have you on. We look forward to talking ball with you. It's a brand new world, Jim, in DC. Brand new front office, brand new coaching staff. What can you tell the people out there in Commander Land about what to expect from Adam Peters, Lance Newmark, and the rest of the guys that are up there?
Yeah, I was with AP for a long time in New England. It was a long time ago now. We're talking over 15 years, but yeah, we were together, and I've known Lance. Lance and I got into the business about around the same time as well. So known those guys a long time. Really good at what they do. I'm glad AP finally got his chance. He'd kind of been waiting for the right situation out there, and you're not going to rush out of a job in with the 49ers unless it's a good one. So he was in a great situation out there. So I don't blame him for taking his time and waiting on one he felt good about, and then going out and getting a buddy of his like Lance. Lance has done a great job in Detroit over the years, and now he's getting rewarded for it, which is cool. I mean, they did a great job. He and Brad Holmes, those guys did a great job putting that team together in Detroit. So they're good guys. They're going to work really hard, man. I mean, there's no secret formula when you get into it. Everyone at that level can evaluate, but it's the guys that really dig in and put time into learning the players the best, in my opinion. That's just my take on it. It's the teams that goes the extra mile and have a staff that goes the extra mile. I mean, when you get on the road for a couple of years, it becomes pretty clear why some teams are good and why some teams aren't. I think it comes down to the effort of the scouting staff. So they'll bring that, and they're making a lot of changes. They've made some changes, brought in some new people. So excited for them, man. I'm really excited to see what they'll do.
It felt like the fan base had built up this idea that it was going to be fantastic head coach. And I think some people were disappointed when it was Dan Quinn. The longer Dan Quinn has been around and the fan base gets inward, I think maybe it feels like they stumbled forward. What can you tell us about Dan Quinn? Because I think you know him a little bit, don't you?
Yeah, we were in Seattle together. Love DQ, man. He's super positive, as you guys probably got the sense now. But man, it's real. It's like I've met some coaches along the years where like the super positivity just doesn't come across real genuine. And but with Dan, it is. I mean, that's him, man. And as a teammate, he is a great teammate. Like when he left Seattle and went back to the University of Florida to be their D coordinator for a little bit before we brought him back. And I mean, I would hit him up, and here he is. He's an SEC. No, I know what it was. He was at Florida, and he came back to us in Seattle, and I was going into Florida. And I hit him up on a random night, and I'm like, DQ, I'd love to get your take on some of these Florida guys before I head in there. And boom, the next thing you know, my phone's ringing, and he's a NFL defensive coordinator. Those guys work crazy hours so that he would take time for a scout and take an hour out of his night to like run down the players with me. Speaks to what kind of teammate he is. So I always appreciated that at DQ, and he's really good on the eval side. He's a great defensive line coach. I feel like his personality is infectious, man. I really do. I mean, I think he's different than what you've had there over the years in the head coaching position. And I think the players are going to love playing for him because of the genuineness. I know that our defense in Seattle, like we missed him. Those guys, Bobby Wagner and Cam and those guys, I mean, they love DQ. They played their butts off for him. So, again, he's another guy I'm really happy for. He's getting another shot.
Jim, speaking of crazy hours, I know one component of your job is compiling of a scouting staff, creating a big board, inviting juniors and seniors to the Senior Bowl. My question is, how do you find a balance of kind of sticking to your board and inviting people to your actual game, or kind of reaching out to NFL teams and getting their input? And on top of that, congratulations. I know you had one of your scouts actually hired by the Carolina Panthers today, so that must feel pretty good too.
Yeah, we had a couple guys hired by Carolina. No, it's been a good pipeline. We've got a lot of guys in the league. It helps, and they're a part of our process. Back to your question, they're a big part of our process. It was important when I got here 6 years ago to build a football operation. We never really had that. We didn't have tape in the building when I got here, so to build a scouting staff was important. This job wouldn't be fun if it was just me sitting around picking players, man. I'll tell you that. Like that's not. I'd still be in the league if I were doing that. But this is fun. It's a lot of fun to build a staff every year. We're in the process right now of bringing guys in that get let go. I mean, these guys that got let go in Washington doesn't mean they're bad scouts. I mean, it just happens. You get caught up in the turnover. You work in football long enough, man, you're going to lose a gig or two. So we're in the process of building that staff together. And then, I think it's important we do our own work. I think the league, the teams respect the work we do here. That's why they hire our guys when they're, once they do things here. So, but it is really important to include the league in a formal way in our selection process because the rosters are for them. So it is a little bit of a balance, right? Like there are guys that, we spend 3 hours. We have these long, like 2.5, 3 hour phone calls when we set the board around Halloween time. And they're exhaustive calls. They take like a week and we just go position by position and we compare notes and share grades. And there's a lot of trust factor there. They know we're not going to go blab that to other teams or media, but like, that's how we know when guys jump in the draft. Like we know in November and December what teams think of these players. So then when you get to April, like I knew Braden Fisk was a 4th or 5th round draft pick. I mean, that's where everybody had Braden Fisk. He ends up going 39 overall. So, do we want to trumpet that for the Senior Bowl? Sure we do. We need to. So we know that. We know that when Terry McLaurin was coming out, everyone had 5th and 6th round grades on him. He went in the 3rd round off an incredible Senior Bowl week. In hindsight, he should have been a 1st round pick, right?
Yes.
But yeah, so we include those guys. It's really important. Now, there's been some times where like I stick to my own personal guns where I don't quite see it the same way, and I believe in a player, and we invite him. Antonio Gibson. Teams had lower grades on Antonio as a wide receiver. I thought he was a running back, so we brought him to play running back. And and that's turned out pretty good for Antonio. So, but for the most part, man, we're usually on the same page with about 95% of the players. And again, we're doing this for them. I feel like I work for the 32 GMs. I work for guys like AP and DQ that have really hard jobs, and we're trying to bring all these guys down there for them to spend a week with them because it's invaluable time, man. They really get to know these players, and it really helps in their decision-making process.
Yeah, it's definitely like a week-long interview for the most part. I think your bowl game does a great job of highlighting players. It's fantastic. Speaking of which, I see that Michigan helmet over your shoulder. I know you're a Michigan guy. We're vested here in DC. We took Mike Sainristil in the 2nd round. I think very highly of him, and I see that little shake in your head. Like, are you pretty confident as a player? Like, what are your thoughts on him as a prospect over here in DC?
Yeah, one of my favorite guys. Go back to just search it on Twitter. Last spring, shoot over like a year ago at this time. I mean, Mikey Sainristil is easy to like. Love the urgency he plays with. I mean, first and foremost, the urgency, man. This guy loves playing. You can tell in his energy. If you went into Michigan last fall, you wouldn't have to ask the staff how much Mikey Sainristil loves football because it's right there on the tape. And the fact that he can go both ways. I mean, I started watching this guy 2 or 3 years ago. I thought he was an NFL wide receiver. I think he could legit play wide receiver in the National Football League. If they get in a pinch, they could play him over there. I was with the Patriots back in the 2000s. We did that with Troy Brown, our great slot receiver. Right. People forget about Troy because there's been Edelman and Welker and all the guys in between. But Troy's the original. Troy's the original New England slot. And we got jammed up late in the year one year with depth at corner and moved Troy over to slot. I don't think he'd played it since high school, and he finished with 3 interceptions in the month of December. So Mikey's got that quality. He's just a really good football player. He is like a pillar type person in your building. I know Terry became a captain there in year 2. It wouldn't shock me if Sainristil is a captain by year 2. That's just the kind of guy he is. So like when AP made that pick, I texted him immediately. Like, man, you picked one of my favorite dudes in the draft. So yeah, I'm excited to see what he does there.
Sticking with the secondary, Jim, last year with Quan Martin, I think maybe at the time they were worried about re-signing Cam. They didn't really have a designated position for him last year. What do you like about Quan Martin? Where you think he fits in?
Well, I think there is a versatility to him that's hard to deny. I mean, he's an explosive athlete. That's what I liked about him to start. And that jumps off the tape. That's pretty easy to see when this guy transitions and triggers on plays, how explosive he is. And then he goes to the combine and the numbers reflected that. But I thought he was a guy you could play from depth, and I thought he could play nickel too. So, and I think even though Sainristil hasn't played safety, I think you could play him there and he'd figure it out. So to me, now you've got some two young, explosive, playmaking type DBs that you're going to you can move around and just try to figure out the best spot for them, but they'll give you flexibility.
If they could put Chin at strong safety, can Martin get over to free?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I think he's got, you look at instincts and range back there, so he's got that to play free. I mean, again, you're bringing up one of my other favorite guys, Jeremy Chin. I don't know what happened in Carolina. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not assigning blame. All I know is this guy was the runner-up for Defensive Rookie of the Year his rookie year, and then something else happened. So when you have turnover like that, it can impact a player's career. We're talking about a 6'2", 225-pound dude that runs in the 4.4s and is super instinctive and can cover anybody. I mean, he's one of the cooler, versatile pieces. I mean, we had Kyle Duggar in the game the year after him. Duggar just gets paid this offseason by the New England Patriots, like big time money. The Patriots feel like he's one of the best young safeties in football. When I did those two guys, I thought they were very, very similar. To me, it's a big prove-it year for Jeremy, man. I'm excited to see what DQ can do with him. He did a lot more in Dallas with a lot less. He was getting things done in Dallas with a much lesser player than Jeremy Chin at the positions he's going to be playing him. So I think he's going to have a huge bounce-back year.
It's odd because it for whatever reason, it feels like Chin's old, and he's not at all. Right? He's like barely in his mid-20s, I think. But for whatever reason, it feels like he's bounced around. I thought we were extremely lucky when we were able to sign him.
Yeah, no, he can do a ton in sub packages, man. You're going to be able to. And this guy can play linebacker. I mean, there's just a ton you can do with him.
Gotcha. Just staying on the offensive side of the ball. So Luke McCaffrey, he's getting a lot of acclaim over here in Washington. He's getting a lot of looks on the outside. I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts. I know he kind of stood out at the Senior Bowl. He had played punt returner during the Senior Bowl, had a pretty big catch as well. How do you view Luke McCaffrey as a prospect? Are you high on him? Do you think he was a third-round pick? And what are some of his strengths?
It's another guy I texted AP on when he made the pick.
There you go.
Yeah, he was one of my favorite guys in this year's draft in terms of the improvement he made from his junior tape. So, like a year ago at this time, I thought Luke was going to be more of a late-round guy. I went on a trip through Texas, did old Texas swing last August and hit like 7 schools in 2 days and showed up early one morning. I missed Rice's practice, but I met Luke in the weight room at like 7 a.m. and talked to a couple of their coaches about him. And, man, it's really cool to see the improvement from year 1 to year 2 at the position. I mean, I expected there to be growth, but not to the level there was. And he just does some stuff that belies that quarterback background, right? Like I thought he was one of the toughest receivers in this class by far. And when I say that, I just mean like working into traffic, exposing his body, not worried about contact, just being unfazed, work in the middle of the field. I think he's super tough, which you wouldn't expect from a former quarterback. And then the ball skills. This guy's ball skills are off the freaking charts now. I mean, you could have put a highlight reel together of Luke's catches, and it would have rivaled any receiver in the draft. Throw a highlight reel of Marvin Harrison together, all those guys up at the top. When I'm talking about like just the actual catch skill component of him going up in traffic and one-handed plays, which one he had in the Senior Bowl game, his ball skills are phenomenal. Playing quarterback growing up, even when you play catch, you don't catch the ball. You got a receiver standing next to you catching the ball for you and flipping you the ball. So like, I don't know where this kid developed his hands and his catch skills, but it's phenomenal. And then he's got the quarterback feel in the slot and getting open. So, I put it out there before the draft. If there is a Puka Nacua in this class, and I hate doing that because Puka's rare, man. I mean, just a 5th-round pick that just broke every rookie record in a league that's over 100 years old. So, like, there isn't going to be another one. But if, like, the guy that's most similar on tape to Puka from last year's college tape to me was Luke.
So do you foresee him as a slot receiver, or can he play both outside as well? What are your thoughts?
I think he can play both.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he can play both. He's got the the size and the speed to play outside, and he's got the feel and the toughness to play inside.
Were you surprised that Rosemy-Jacksaint didn't get drafted?
Not really, because of the 40 time.
Yeah.
And I saw Marcus at the Georgia spring game, whatever that was, the day before the Masters, a while back now, and we talked about it. The 40 time hurt him quite a bit. You know, he chose to run at Georgia. It's a slow track at Georgia, and it wasn't great. But you talk about ball skills. I mean, he's right up there with Luke. I mean, this dude catches everything. I saw someone in your media put out a shot of him like one hand in a ball a couple weeks ago. I'm like, get used to that stuff. Like that's gonna be training camp every day with Marcus now. I mean, to me, he was super dependable. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but he knows how to run routes. He knows how to attack defenders, and he can go up and make great plays on the ball. To me, he's got a chance to make a team. If I didn't think he could make a 53, he wouldn't have got an invite to the Senior Bowl. I promise you. Not everyone gets drafted out of our game because of 40 times and, you know, bad medical stuff or maybe some character stuff that we don't know about. I mean, we don't have the resources to be in a school every day. So like there's some character stuff that falls through our cracks. It's just impossible. You know, we're not $1 billion franchise. So there's reasons why some of our guys don't get picked. But when we invite them, I promise you, all these guys had consistent draftable grades across the league. And I thought the talent on tape was guys that could make a team. So if he makes it as your fifth or sixth wideout, that wouldn't surprise me at all because he's been a really good special teams player as well. And those guys have to be a factor in the kicking game, and he can do that.
They took Brandon Coleman this year. The left tackle position for Washington is thin, to say the least. You like him at tackle? You give him an opportunity to start there, or you think he's naturally just a guard?
I lean more guard with my eval than tackle. I've heard they're going to start him there at tackle, and that's their prerogative. They see something else, which is great. I mean, that's the fun part of doing scouting. You have that conversation, right? But I like Brandon Coleman a lot. He's another guy. I mean, really close to the draft. I try to save some stuff as we get closer to the draft. He was a guy that I knew teams were higher on than the media. Like you didn't see a lot of Brandon Coleman love on social media leading up to the draft. That's why I popped it late, because I knew the guy was going to go, going to be a day 2 pick. There was way too many teams were telling me they had day 2 grades on him for this guy to fall to the 4th or 5th round where most people in the media had him pegged. So again, on that same swing I saw Luke, I went up to TCU, and this dude took command of his unit on the field and pulled them all together and chewed them out. And like to see a college guy nowadays, you don't see that a lot. Like this younger generation, like they don't hold each other accountable like they used to. They want everyone to like them, right? So when you see a young guy, take his group together and say, guys, this isn't happening anymore. I walked away that day. I'm like, I love this guy. Yeah, the tape's good. He's a good player. He's big, strong, plays square, anchors. I mean, he can move people off the ball. There's a ton to like on the tape. But when I saw him take control of his offensive line unit, I knew that's a guy. If I were running a team, I'd want him in my locker room.
Jim, what is Washington getting with Ben Sinnott? I know we kind of wanted him to establish a good relationship with Jaden Daniels, a little outlet over the middle. Where do you see him? I've heard things where he's like more of like an H-back. He can flex in the backfield. He can make a Kyle Juszczyk kind of 49er kind of component, tool like that. Do you see him like that? Is he a high volume wide receiver? What are your thoughts on him?
He's all that stuff, man. Label him whatever you want to label him. I don't care whatever they put on wherever they put him on the depth chart. Who cares? They got a guy that can make plays for him. So, really like the athlete on tape going back to last spring when we started watching Ben. I feel like I've been watching this guy for a couple of years, but I really like the athlete. I thought he was like a 7-level athlete at the position, which is, on most scales, very good. Most Pro Bowl players have 7-level athleticism. And then to dig into his background and saw that he was a walk-on, I was like, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, this dude was a walk-on. And again, the cool part there is then he goes to the combine and he does it. It's great when it all kind of lines up. It's one thing to see a great athlete on tape. And then he goes to you like to see it at the combine too. But the thing that sticks out about Ben, and I've harped on it time after time when I talk about him is just that, I mean, he was the offense at Kansas State, and he drew a lot of extra attention. If you're game planning Kansas State, you better take that kid out of the game. And he still found a way to be one of the most productive tight ends in college football. He's got a really nice feel getting open. He can make contested plays. He can run after the catch, which is a really transferable skill set. When you're talking about any pass catcher, if guys can create space for themselves before and after the catch, it's a cool quality. And then he's got kind of a versatile body type where he's short enough to play fullback and get pad under pad and, you know, get on linebackers, and athletic enough to adjust on the move and do all those things. And he's probably right there in terms of being, you know, a guy you can attach as a wing or something and get something out of him in the run game, you know, as an inline player. So, yeah, really, really versatile guy, man. He's a valuable guy to have. And I think it's awesome they got Zach Ertz there to train him up, because they're similar body types. Going back to when I did Ertz coming out, I mean, I think I remember Ertz right, but it's hard for some players to coach other players at their position if they're different body types. Like, it would be hard for a big receiver to teach a slot how to run a certain route when they have completely different biomechanics. So the fact that Zach and Ben are similar bodies, I think Zach can teach him quite a bit.
Jim, we'd be remiss if we didn't ask you about Jaden Daniels before we got out of here. Curious your thoughts on what Washington's getting with him.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Jaden, man. I love him. We invited him to the Senior Bowl. Obviously, he was on Sports Center one night with a Senior Bowl hat, and then ended up not at the game. But that's good. I get it. He's the top 10 pick. You know, that's fine. No, I love him. I think that the false narrative this year was that he was like made this huge jump and he's so improved. Well, that was him 2 years ago. He made that big jump 2 years ago. Yeah. Yes. Was this year's tape better than last year's? But the biggest jump was in 2022. So this guy's continued to get better each year. I was in Tuscaloosa to watch that guy play live against Alabama. And I mean, there's just certain games where you walk away from the stadium and you're like, yeah, I just saw something different. And that was one of those nights for me. And then a couple weeks later, I wasn't at a game, or I was home from a day game, and they're playing at night against Florida. And he has that all-time game where he runs for 200 and throws for 300, which had never been done in college football, something like that, 400 and 200, whatever it was. It was man against boy stuff, which in the SEC, I mean, come on, like that doesn't happen very often. Like, you can see man amongst boys stuff when you're doing an FCS level guy, like when Christian Watson was playing at North Dakota State. Like, some of the guys he played against are like, okay, come on, this is ridiculous. I mean, Jaden made SEC guys look like that. So, yeah, again, just excited to see where this team ends up. I mean, it's such a different roster now than it was a few months ago. Yeah. A lot of things need to come together, and they're all going to be learning new systems, which is hard to do. It's going to be hard to hit the ground running in September with all these guys learning new stuff. But I like what they've done. It's an exciting football team.
Is it getting steamy hot in Mobile yet?
It definitely is. It definitely is. I went up to the draft in Detroit, and I came home, and we had the humidity had not settled in yet when I left. And by the time I came home, it was here, man. You walk outside in the morning and your sunglasses get fogged up pretty quick when you walk out of the apartment, when you walk out of the house.
Yeah. Jim, as always, we appreciate the time that you spend with us. You're the best, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Jim.